All right, we're live. Okay, so we got this weird angle, so let's go for it. Okay, so yeah, I've been watching a lot of videos. People are obsessed with books. Which one are classics? Which one are not classics? I mean, some books go out of print. There's books that are classics and I think very general and readable for or teachable books. I mean, it just doesn't matter who you are. A lot of these people on YouTube that are doing videos are either in college or academics or on the academic track. I myself, I was as a student, I was way different. I was like full of. I'll go through the whole stage, but now I graduated in like 35 years ago. But I continued reading, and I'll tell you why. Uh, and there's like just different books that just kind of like I get interested. Like I was never into Victorian novels that much. I mean, only briefly in college, but now I'm kind of like my sensibilities like is way more kind of like into. I think just because like the modern times just seeing more like the late Victorian era than it did in the 80s, which just seemed like I don't even know if I really apprehend it. Like if we were doing like YouTube videos and I'll sit up here. If I was doing YouTube videos in the 80s, I think I would have got maybe things wrong. I just didn't. It probably took me from 85 to 95, 10 years to just kind of teach myself what the hell was going on in literature for that whole period. And so let me go back. There's people, when you're in college, you end up reading a lot of these anthologies and stuff. And you look at names like Catherine Mansfield or T.S. Eliot, and I guess, who's this? Well, this is Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf, I I know a lot of people have been talking about Virginia Woolf on YouTube lately. Um, Mrs. Dalloway, I didn't think was like a very good book, but I read that there's an annotated Mrs. Dalloway that just came out in the last few years, and I enjoyed it way more reading that book than I did when I read it originally, possibly in '85. So yeah, let me go back. So when when I was in high school, like I read the usual stuff that they gave you in high school, Lord of the Flies, maybe Henry James. I read real early on, Edgar Allan Poe, Yeats, like just kind of like the typical English, and then I read some science fiction and stuff. I don't read science fiction anymore. I read again Imperial in the Kurt Vonnegut. But as far as acquiring books, it might be different now. Back then in the 80s, I was able to, because I was lucky enough, my dad died when I was like 16, like in 1980. Like I inherited some money and was able to, you were able to, back then, just go to all these Goodwills and charity shops and just, like a novel, like books like this were like $10 or a quarter at the most. Now they've kind of maybe up to one or two or five or $10. But back then I would like maybe from 80 to 85, I would be doing book hauls like every week, and like and then I kind of made, because I was hanging around a lot of people that were already in college when I was like a junior and a senior, and basically when I was a senior in high school, the I had already I had taken so many classes the first 3 years that I only needed like a U.S. government class, so I had a lot of free time. So during my senior year, I was just reading. Like I'll be hanging out with these guys in college, and they'd be mentioning authors like James Joyce and Samuel Beckett, or every time I hear an author, or I learned about Nabokov. My friend Patrick, like I just looked at his book collection. So when he went up to college to San Francisco State, I just kind of grabbed a bunch of his books and, read what I could, because he had I remember he definitely had a Nabokov and Rudyard Kipling and just authors I wasn't familiar with. And then I would go to the, library sales, charity shops, Goodwills, and just buy 10 books for $1 or 20 books for $2. And that's where I bought that first edition of William Burroughs Naked Lunch that I ended up selling for like $300 later. I bought it for $0.25 at the TikToker over in Costa Mesa. And so I would just, go buy all the books because I was, by the time I was like 16, 17, I was like, I didn't know, I was behind, like you find people in those, like maybe those AP classes are in college, they're really well-read people, but I was like, maybe, and so I had to catch up. So I just spent, like that whole summer, I just spent reading. So I read all the Russians, all the French, 19th century, all these Americans, anything that was kind of interesting, anything I had heard of. Back in the 80s, like that was like the, Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Milan Kundera, and even like Kafka were kind of well known. So I would just, a lot of, Borges, Carlos Fuentes. I mean, all those one translation. So, and then I went to college and I did a seminar in James Joyce, and I did one in Dickinson, and I was a literature major. So, and I was writing too, and I, I won. I was like the best writer at my junior high. I thought it was a good writer at high school, but I didn't really hang around those circles. I was more involved in sports and TV production in high school, but I did some writing secretly, and I was definitely doing a lot of reading because I felt like I was like lacking. I mean, if I knew what I knew now, I would have really been kind of involved more. Like the people I went to college. When I went to college, there was people I knew from high school that were English majors and stuff, and I kind of had caught up to them by the time I was like 20 and stuff. But it took like 4 years of reading books every day and educating myself, and so I don't know how you YouTubers or how many books, because by now I've probably read, you go to Goodreads, I've read 2,000 or 3,000 novels, and maybe it might be 5,000. I don't know. It's hard to remember everything because I wasn't really like counting every book and stuff back then. It wasn't, and I would read the full. I never put anything down. I even like Ayn Rand. I read the first 300 pages. I go, this is brilliant, and then I read the rest of it. I go, this is junk. So, but it's kind of like Ayn Rand was kind of a popular novelist back then, and stuff. So we'll see. We go 8 minutes. Okay, so I went from college. Okay, so post college. So like when I got out of college, there was a kind of a flirtation with grad school, and then I ended up moving to San Francisco. And then what happened was I kind of got involved with journalism, and so a couple magazines. I had worked for the college newspaper. So Doak Archive, some of the publishers started sending me books. That by the time I got the Cups magazine, I was getting like a lot of books, all during the 90s, definitely from 93 to 2003. I was getting sent a lot of books, hundreds of books. So I would read, but most of those were brand new novels. There would be like a new translation maybe, or like I read that Virginia Woolf annotated version, or I read the new Dostoevsky translation that came out. But so during the 90s, I became a journalist in the Bay Area, wrote a lot of book reviews. I interviewed a lot of authors. So I would go to readings, I would read the book, I would meet the authors, I would interview the authors. So I get to meet a lot of authors that were kind of happening in the 80s, even before, because I used to go to readings at Beyond Baroque, and I met T.C. Boyle, maybe, and Yevtushenko in the 80s, and other people. Harry Matthews I met pretty early on, and I met the whole Beyond Baroque crowd in the late 80s before I even went to San Francisco. So, but in San Francisco, I mean, uh, people, a lot of those authors would do, Barnes and Nobles kind of were all over, in the 90s. I mean, it must be mostly because people were reading Harry Potter, but I was just, people would be doing book tours, and I would be, like Bret Easton Ellis or Douglas Coupland or Martin Amis would come in town, and I would do an interview with them. So I get to meet all these people. So not only did I read the books, but I met a lot of these authors, and I met a lot of the publishers. I would go to Book Expo, and I think and so I was reading the whole time. So I've been reading, reading professionally for like 35 years. So I feel like I know ideas about the novel, and the more you read, when you read over 1,000 novels, you kind of like look back at the guys like Proust and Thomas Mann, who I read also when I was a teenager, and you just kind of see them differently as an older person. I mean, you can, and yeah, I mean, people are kind of like wrestling with the idea of classics, like, oh, there's too many white males. Well, like the whole idea that you have to be a good looking person to be an author is like a very modern idea. Like, and it's sort of like having a good candy wrapper, or you publish some book and it's like, there's a good looking girl that's an author, and that's a selling point and stuff. Like, I mean, Elizabeth Wurtzel would have been, her books wouldn't have sold if she was not attractive. I mean, nobody would have read them. I mean, she put herself on the cover of most of her books and stuff. It was that was kind of thing. So if you're kind of looking at old pictures of old Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, and just expecting to be turned on or something, or expecting everybody to look like a male model, it's just not going to happen and stuff. And so anyway, so classics. I mean, yeah, there's classics. I mean, and other. I mean, Moby Dick and Edgar Allan Poe were forgotten for 100 years, and then they kind of got revived in the 60s, and by young people kind of rediscovered them, and then people started writing about them again. I don't know if that's going to happen to some of these guys, to a Rachel Cusk or something, or, I don't even know if anyone's gonna, once they get older and stuff, it's like, people might not even like read them because they might be just kind of stuck to a time. Like Elizabeth Wurtzel, it just seems like she's not going to be read in a few years, because there's going to be other people that replace her and stuff. And so, yeah, my reading. So like, so classics. I mean, I like James. I like the big guy, the big names: James Joyce, Nabokov, Hemingway, whoever, fill the blank. And then there's the 20th century. I also like, Proust, but there's other guys that I like that are kind of obscure, like Raymond Roussel and Irving Rosenthal, who wrote Sheeper. And I don't expect those to get classic status, but they're kind of like underground. So I see books as, the classics that kind of get embraced by each generation. And then there's the underground. There's kind of a counterculture kind of underneath that kind of like layer. There's 3 layers, because there's like the pop. So, like, I mean, in American literature, we kind of see Faulkner in 20th century, Faulkner, Hemingway, and Fitzgerald as being the kind of best writers. But there were other writers that were more popular during that time. Or whoever wrote Gone with the Wind, was definitely a more widely read book, but nobody can remember her name or whatever. And no, probably they don't read much of her books anyway. And Dos Passos used to be more well known. Now he's not sort of not read, because maybe because of political things, or maybe that might be true of Ezra Pound too. But so acquiring books, I had like my original collection in the '80s. I brought some of that to when I moved to San Francisco, and then I had, because of like my magazine involvements and my access to review copies, I had a second collection, and then I took all that to New York. I remember in New York I had at some point I had about 2,000 books, so I had to the more I had to move, the more I had to get rid of stuff, because I just hated hauling that stuff around. And then, in 2004 I moved back. I either sold or gave away my books in New York. I brought a few back with me, but all this stuff I have now are all stuff I have. I didn't. I saved a few books, and I brought a few books back from New York, but all this stuff are replacements. It's like that this Nabokov book I have up here, I've had for a long time. This is a fairly new book I found at a sale. But I mean, a lot of these books that the thing is, like, if you just stick around, like books that are $20-$30 become like $5 or $10 books, like in 5 or 10 years, because like they kind of people like, or even like CDs, like you go to like a library sales, and there you see great stuff from the '90s being like offered up for like $1 and stuff, or even like vinyl and stuff. That's where I got a lot of my records, like just because they were kind of neglected at some like library. And what else? What else? I think a lot of people are misguided. These books are classics because it's more about the book. It's not about what you relate to and what you want to achieve. Like, it's like, I kind of see myself as this, hippie or this kind of person or a beatnik, and therefore I only got to read this kind of genre. So like, I don't read, like whenever I meet people, I just ask them, okay, what are the great books? What should I be reading? Like still, even from back the '80s till now, and so I definitely check them out, at least one book or something. And I don't read all classics, but I'm trying to read like new interesting books. And but yeah, I don't know what to say, but here we go. We've been going a while. Someone's watching this. Oh, do you have a question there? Oh, hey, which um which vinyls did you have? Are you on Discogs? I have a question here. Yeah, if you're looking, it's real hard. I think when I was like collecting vinyls, when I was selling vinyls, 10 years ago, a lot with me and my brother, we bought records all over from Craigslist, all over the Southern California area. It was still kind of cheap. You can buy like big collections for very cheap. I think since there's so many vinyl stores and collectors, and now it's like you're battling it out with 10 or 20 people that are all trying to vie for the same collections. Like I got like a lot of those Velvet Underground original copies of that Lou Reed. Some guy from Irvine gave me like all these great records and stuff. What do you? Oh, Julian Cope. Which one? Which Julian Cope one? Yeah, I have a Teardrops Explodes and Air Moon Safari. Interpreter. Is that like a later one? I never even heard of that one. I remember, yeah, I saw Julian Cope play a couple times in the '90s, like the Saint Julian and the record. Kind of, yeah, he was like on MTV a lot. I mean, like, yeah, he's kind of more known as kind of a writer now than an actual musician. I don't know if people like Teardrops Explode. Is that like some kind of rare? Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I bought I felt like I have a Teardrops Explodes single and one that's and a Teardrops Explodes like their album and whatever. Yeah, I think because like I don't think Teardrops Explodes ever had an American label, so yeah, you don't really hear about them as much as you do like Echo and the Bunny Men and a few of the other Liverpool bands, because they weren't. I think they had already broken up, and like even in the early '80s when I bought Teardrops Explodes records, I think you had to buy them on import only. No, I think, Teardrops Explodes. It was why no one bought them, is because I don't think they ever were released in America. But and they only existed for a couple of years. They already broke up. He already went solo by '85 or something. And what else? It's a regular album. Yeah, but I mean, but when Julian Cope went solo, I think he did have an American label. He was on MTV. Definitely World Shut Your Mouth got a lot of play here. I mean, yeah, he did. I mean, I saw him at the. I remember he played like the Club Lingerie and Club DNA in San Francisco, and I mean, yeah, it wasn't like he wasn't playing like super big places. No, I mean, me neither. I kind of I bought stuff in the '70s and '80s, and then I just got kind of burned out on music. I mean, if I would have in '85, I thought music was getting kind of going in the wrong direction. With all that hair metal and stuff. If I would have discovered Detroit techno, I would have still been on board. So there was a period from '85 to '95. I wasn't really paying attention to music. I was just in college, like reading my, you know, Norton anthology or whatever, New Vine. No, I wasn't. I took a, yeah, I took a 10, 15 year hiatus from the music scene. That's why I kind of jumped on late to the Brian Jonestown. I would have probably been into Brian Jonestown like in the early '90s if I was more kind of hip to the music. I didn't. I mean, I had heard of Stone Roses and stuff and different things, but I probably saw Ian Brown way before. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, this seems like a yeah. When I've sold records, like I had like the Fugees on the score on vinyl, and it seems like yeah, people. Yeah, I remember. I kind of went from vinyl, and then in the mid '80s, I was like collecting tapes and stuff, and I was really into hip hop for a couple years. And then when I tried to get some review copies in the later '80s or the early '90s, they sent me a CD, and I had to borrow somebody's CD player and make a tape of it so I can review it and stuff because I didn't probably have a CD player till '95. So when I'm in New York in '95, then I started, I guess maybe even '96. Then I got some, I go, okay, well, I have a CD player now. So, my friend did a fire sale and sold he sold me this big boom box and his computer and every time I moved back to LA. And so I had a CD, so I had to buy some CDs. I had like 3 CDs at that time. So yeah, yeah, vinyl. Yeah, but I think since the music industry wasn't like printing a lot of vinyl in the '90s, I mean, it's like Nirvana, like a lot of the stuff. Those records are really expensive, like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins. You can find them on vinyl they're really expensive. And I sold that Fugees record for like $35 on eBay. Black metal. Yeah. So when I got in my CD player in '95, Burzum was kind of stuff that was kind of happening and stuff, and like the Japanese noise and all that stuff, Merzbow and Burzum, and that was kind of interesting for a couple years. I don't know. I don't really listen to much of that anymore. Black metal, Swedish black metal. Yeah, I've seen that Sano band. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but yeah, Burzum. I was really into Burzum when because I think the record that was put out by Feral House or something, because I read that Lords of Chaos book, because I was more from 85, I was in the 80s, in the later 80s and the 90s, especially the 90s, I was more kind of in the literary scene, in the book publishing scene. So, but Burzum, because I read Lords of Chaos, because I was friends with Adam Parfrey and Feral House. He sent me the Burzum CD. So, that I think most of the 90s I was either into techno or instrumental music. I wasn't really into song-based music at all. What about you? Oh yeah, I've heard of that band. Oh, like in the last 20 years? Well, I did a video. I mean, I don't know. I don't think. I think writers now are I mean, I guess Gone Girl's okay. The writers now aren't. I read mostly like nonfiction. I don't. There's not very many newer novels that I think are really great. Maybe it's because it's just there's because of social media. There's just too much and video games, and it's really hard to analyze. Books kind of come up and down, and I don't know, like a new book that's really good. I know. I that's why I did that video, because I like the New York Times best 100 books since 2000. I hadn't heard of 70 of the authors and stuff. I didn't really think they were any good, and even Jonathan Franzen's is fine. I don't know, Roberto Bolano, Rachel Kushner, Otessa Mossafag, but I don't know if anyone's going to read those books like in 10 or 15 years. Is it maybe it's just a fad or something. Yeah, that's what somebody tells me. But I'm connected to the book publishing world enough where they could send me like they send me a review copy, or at least an online PFD or something. But yeah, I mean, what do you think? Well, what's a good book that's come out in the last 5 years? I thought that Jarrett Kobach, I Hate the Internet, was pretty good, but that might be like almost 10 years ago now. I mean, I'm dressed up like this, I look like maybe into black metal or something, like some people like look at me and they think I listen to Motorhead or something. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, because I interview people, like I interviewed the guy from the Swans and different people, and the guy from Dream Syndicate, and Azure Ray, and they come up with their memoirs or whatever, and I read those books and I just want to read about stuff that I don't know about. I got books right here about the Victorian era and literary books. Yeah. No, A Gentle Giant. Is that a band from the 70s? It's like a kind of a prog rock band. I mean, I barely. I mean, as far as prog rock, I mean, I'm only was aware of like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and King Crimson, Van der Graaf Generator, little bit of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, um, Rush. No, I'm not, I mean, I'm more of a punk rocker. I'm not really into musicianship. I'm, gentle. What's, yeah, yeah. My friend Steve was kind of a bit into Gentle Giant, or yeah, I think that's. I mean, back then it was a lot of the prog. It was like kind of like before my time. I mean, it was kind of ageist because I was like, it's okay to, I mean, I did get into Emerson, Lake and Palmer a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I started going to shows, the punk thing and how it was going on, or it was definitely like punk and post punk, and liking Montevicious Orchestra, or Larry Coryell or something, or Robert Fripp was a little weird. Yeah, I have a theory about that. I mean, because I'm from LA, I tend to like the West Coast West Coast punk bands, and I don't really like Boston punk rock or New York punk. Well, then like I like Patti Smith and the Johnny Thunders punk, but the Agnostic Front, like the later punk or the Boston punk rock scene or the DC punk, I just kind of see that as kind of, to me, like punk is like a folk movement. It's like everyone's getting up there on stage. So I think yeah, the Bad Brains are probably like the best band out of that whole East Coast movement, but I prefer listening to the LA bands, the San Francisco bands, even the ones from uh, the Pacific Northwest and the London bands, and just the East Coast. I just never really got into them for some reason. I mean, I don't know if it's better. It's just because I think like punk rock is, at the end of the day, is kind of a local folk grassroots thing. So you kind of like you go you go to you go out into the street, your city center, and you go see the bands in there, and they're singing about what and then every local scene kind of sings about things that concern them, and then just and and then and then that and then I have another criticism of punk rock. I think some of the bands that signed to big labels kind of like blew it. I think like Stiff Little Fingers, that came out with their first record on Rough Trade, which was an independent, was better. When the Sex Pistols and the Clash signed to big labels, or the American bands signed to big labels, yeah, they got more notice at the beginning. But I think punk, I kind of liked how Crass like created their own like fold out records, and how Stiff Little Fingers came out with the on Rough Trade, which nobody really considered. They considered them a distribution or a record store. It wasn't really a label and stuff. I don't know. Yeah. Well, no, yeah, but yeah, you go out there and the writing, and I think like punk. Yeah, not now. I'm not. I mean, the punks now is kind of like a established style. It's like people go out there and do this really shouty, aggressive music, and it's kind of punk inspired, and but it's not really changing anything. It's just like they go up on stage and they just shout a lot, and bands like Idols, and it might be good. You might be up for it. You drink a beer and stuff, and you feel like you rile up the troops and stuff, and everyone has a good night. Now it's just entertain. It's just another form of entertainment. But I think like the true punk is kind of like saying something, and Bob Dylan at the Cafe Bazaar. It's like, okay, where you're going to this small stage somewhere with your friends and stuff, and you're getting out your emotions or something. Yeah. Yeah, I think. Well, that's a whole nother subject. Yeah, like AI, and I'll probably be talking about that. AI is going to be influencing music, literature, art, everything in the future. There's going to be some kind of interesting um, collaboration. I think you got to do, yeah, the AI and the human things has to work with together and stuff. I just don't think like doing AI and just for itself and just go, oh yeah, look at this AI, look what my computer's like done out. But I think like you got to use computers and humans and kind of mix it up, and so you don't know which is which. And it's going to be in the future because there might be like AI or singularity and all that stuff. In the future, it might be like we're all like wearing these goggles and we're going wherever we want to go, and you know, um, we could like be like time travelers, and I don't know. It's gonna get weird. Maybe it's possible. Maybe in like 5 or 10 years. So yeah, I think Momus is definitely a visionary artist, and he's definitely a guy that's well read, very articulate, and is definitely interested in the art world and the publishing world and everything. Yeah, I mean that's what's going to happen. You know, the Beatles and all these people are going to become like AI avatars, and you're gonna go like, oh yeah, Kurt Carpenter, who's like one of the greatest pitchy singers of all time, and with the had perfect pitch, and you're just gonna go, okay, well, right, Carpenter's just kind of create an album and even like the Richard Carpenter can come in and play a little piano on it or something, so it has that human element, and then you have Karen Carpenter, and it just sings songs about the Ukraine or whatever is going on in the world. It might be kind of interesting. Yeah, is punk? Yeah, I think punk is more physical and sort of anti-technology. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. This whole thing about what's more punk or who's the Godfather of punk or whatever. To me, like punk is a very democratic thing. It's all everybody. We're all on the same ship. There's no classes and stuff. It's very democratic. So I don't know. I think my view of punk is it's kind of separate from that. Punk doesn't need computers. It needs people, just going out on the streets with an acoustic guitar or something, and then it needs people, and you just gonna rile each other up, and sing and make up songs on the spot. No, I haven't done the radio show for this year, so I think things are way more interesting in the YouTube world these days, or like you say, the AI world. It's kind of moving. I don't do TikTok. Maybe I'll do TikTok, but I think things are way more interesting in this kind of world because you can have like actual conversations with people and stuff. And remember, this this video was about. I mean, I was watching these other YouTube videos about people like with their book hauls and stuff, and I mean, I probably have like 500 or 600 books now, but I did have like 2,000 books, and I mean, originally I bought them all at the Goodwill, and I didn't pay full price for too many books, and then because I was a book reviewer, I got free books for many years. I still get books sent to me, and then I bought books on half price on eBay like everybody else and stuff. So I would just if anybody's tell me how you acquired your books And because I mean, I definitely, there's definitely like books I want to read, and I've read the classics, and I'm rereading the classics. I might go back to the Iliad and the Odyssey soon. But yeah. I don't know. I think that's maybe a possibility though, that lot of the bands, because like I mean, AI might make new music sort of obsolete by just continue to have like Beatles and Beach Boys and Carpenters and Stevie Wonder records, like and Michael Jackson and Prince, and just have those records keep on coming out. Yeah, yeah, I'm up for anything. I mean, I mean, I have recorded some music and stuff, because I mean, I started this thing by, like maybe, um, I'm coming out with this book of poetry. It's coming out in the next month or so. But how that started was I had written poetry for like 30, 40 years, and I had like a big stack of 1,000 poems, and I kind of edited down to 200, and I started reading them, doing tracks and stuff, and I go, well, it'd be a lot better if I just like recorded music and did songs and stuff, because I had an access to a free studio. So, but yeah, I mean, like the AI is kind of come into play in the last couple of years, where everyone's doing this real interesting stuff. I'm not a real big technical person, so there might be I'd have to have another person that's really super more technical than me. I'm just gonna, I'm usually like 5 years behind the cutting edge stuff. I want to like have stuff that's like really in the future and stuff. Okay. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's valid. I mean, people should be doing. I mean, yeah. Well, that's getting back to like punk rock. Like, I mean, it was like in the '90s. They were saying that the techno music was kind of punk rock, and because it was like a lot of people were non-musicians doing music and stuff. So it seemed, so a lot of us that were into punk in the '70s and '80s kind of moved to the techno and the dance music, because that seemed like the guys that were, and like kind of the guys that were doing punk just had a mohawk and were doing these angry songs. That wasn't really punk anymore. It was like these guys that were using computers and doing, like the guys like the Prodigy and guys in the '90s and stuff. And yeah, so in that way, that was punk. But I mean, yeah, music's there's always like a change. It seems like there's going to be another change. I mean, I ran into some booking agent at this thing on Saturday in San Pedro, and I was telling him, I go, yeah, this seems like there's going to be a big change in music, and when, like in this period right now, like in 2009, the whole Strokes Libertines, kind of Jack White thing kind of fell apart, and then this whole new group of musicians came along, like the Double X and Saint Vincent and Warpaint, and there was a lot of other and like kind of dancey rock stuff, and that's kind of happening now. There's going to be, I mean, there hasn't been any big wow records this year for, I don't think. Maybe Charlie XCX record. I don't know. I have to listen to it again. There's no record that really is overwhelming. It's just more about the live show, like who's doing the great live show right now. But there might be a thing where the bands that are kind of like the most exciting are kind of doing like something different than 5 or 10 years ago, like that stuff. Or Jack White seems a little dated now, or the Strokes, or Yeah, but the Jack White, I bought a Jack White record a couple years ago, and I just thought it was horrible. It just sounded like nothing. It just I wasn't really inspired. It used to be, I mean, the White Stripes record used to come out, and it used to be like, you know, the thing you would want to listen to for a month or two. And it's like, and I don't really get that feeling with the Jack White. It just seems like all about some kind of gimmick. He's trying out some new pedals or something, or this one's like is the vinyl only thing. Which is an idea I had. A lot of people probably had that idea before. Oh shit. Okay, well, this video's gone on twice as long as I wanted it to. Okay, so yeah, thanks for asking all the questions. I mean, just people, but people. I mean, there's all this great music, like we said, and the internet. We could sell records. We can find all this great music, but people. I mean, I'm not giving up on literature. I think literature might come back as sort of some kind of like ugly analog retro thing, and maybe there's a bunch of girls that want to be librarians that are kind of dragging in the fashion aspect of books or something, but that's okay because like it's making people like me more relevant because I've been reading for like 40 years or more. And, and I met all these authors and I interviewed all these authors. And so, I know a lot about this subject, whereas I felt like, like 10 or 15 years ago, I felt like, oh, there's Roberto Bolaño, but who else am I going to read? There's not really, there wasn't a big list of new innovative writers that I was unaware of, in 2005 or something. Okay. Peace out. Check out the next one. Next chapter of Ulysses coming up.